Thank you very much for tuning in. It's Stuart here, and welcome to my live stream. If you'll just bear with me a moment, I just need to take care of something. Just a moment. Somebody's trying to get through to me, and I just need to tell them I'm making a video. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this live stream is talk about the calls from last night. That's the 19th of, January 2025, the line with Matt Dillahunty and what's the other guy's name? Owen something. Written it down somewhere. I can't find it. Yeah. Okay, Owen. I've actually I've written down here Johnny Depp because when I saw him, he reminded me of Johnny Depp, and I think that's quite a good compliment from me. So I don't know whether you agree. Does Owen look like Johnny Depp or not? I think he does, and I think he looks pretty good actually. Right. Also, I'd like to say that at the moment I'm actually staying in my father's house now. I was listening to Matt in this show earlier today, and I'm upstairs in this house, and my dad is downstairs. I'm listening to Matt Dillahunty, and he's getting angry. It was Caleb's call. Caleb called in. I was getting wound up. He was getting very angry, and I usually listen in my own flat. I'm away from my own flat at the moment, and nobody can really hear anything because I've got thick walls, and I'm fairly confident that nobody can hear anything when Matt is shouting his head off and getting angry. But I had my door slightly ajar here, and I suddenly realized, oh my God, my dad is downstairs and he can hear Matt ranting and raving. What the hell does he think I'm listening to? I kind of had the experience of hearing Matt ranting, which somebody else who doesn't know who he is and the whole context of it, and it actually sounds quite kind of disturbing unless you're used to it. I don't know why I hope he didn't hear anything. He must be thinking, what the hell are you listening to? Some guy is going crazy on the internet. Okay. So yes, thank you, David. You've left a comment there. Okay. Now then, what do I want to say? That's the question. You all tuned in to hear me say something interesting, and I'm being boring as anything. So let me see if I can pull my act together and talk. So let's have a look. First of all, though, there was a show last week, and there was a caller who called about pantheism. And this is despite the fact that at the beginning of every show, Matt says, don't call in with your esoteric gods, don't call in with gods which have got no agency or consequence of not believing in such gods. Yet some always calls in with, oh, we're one with everything. There's a stream of consciousness running through everything in the entire universe. And so this caller was saying that the galaxies were passing information between each other since the moment of the Big Bang, apparently, despite the fact that galaxies did not exist at the moment of the Big Bang, or even shortly afterwards. It took, I understand, billions of years for them to form. So he didn't really seem to be scientifically coherent. And I mean, he left it at that. Really, he didn't force his point. I think he realized that he either wasn't well prepared, or just articulating this God that is everything, that is the universe, that everything is conscious, etc. Didn't really. It's just a set of claims, and that's the whole problem. That's the whole problem with the whole theistic position. It's a set of claims, and the typical strategy of, shall we say, let me see, a hobbyist theist, somebody who comes online and believes in God so strongly that it's almost like a team game, that if I can prove that an atheist has got a weak epistemology or has missed something or has got something wrong, somehow that makes my claim that there is a God more reasonable. And it doesn't, because no matter how poor my epistemology is, it doesn't make your claim for the existence of a God any more reasonable. What it might say is that there's some evidence out there that because of my poor epistemology, I haven't really properly come to grips with, and if only I would, and if I could improve my epistemology, then I might too start to believe in the existence of God. But what I typically get from theists is a lot of straw manning, a lot of shifting of the burden of proof. If you can't create a self-replicating cell, or if you can't say exactly how it happened, or if you can't say how the universe began, or if you can't describe this or account for that, then there's a God. You're an atheist. You're wrong. You can't tell me what I need to know. You can't explain it. And whoopee-doo, yippee, there's a God after all. That's not how it works. No matter how faulty I am with any of my statements, it doesn't improve your position. That has got to be done properly, to a proper standard. And if your claim, if the nature of what you're arguing for doesn't fit in with proper methods of determining whether something is real or not, that's not the fault of atheists. That's your fault for believing in a proposition which is not really supportable by the best methods that we've got for determining truth from fiction. Okay, enough of that. Let me go on to the calls. So that was a pantheism last week. So let me just go through these calls. Caleb's call I'll probably do last because it was the longest. So these are in no particular order otherwise. Yeah, so Morgan called in saying, by the way, there were some prank callers for yesterday's show. There seem to be more prank callers, and I wonder how they get through the call screeners, and people are using voice changers. I don't know anything about this technology. Some kind of artificial intelligence to change their voice so that it's not recognizable. I don't know. This is something that I've never really seen these. I suppose it might be interesting to sort of experiment with them, but if I had a stupid squeaky voice, I wouldn't be on here doing this. If I couldn't use my own voice, and if I wasn't happy using my own voice on these YouTube videos, I wouldn't bother. If I had to use some kind of voice engine or voice software to make myself sound, I don't know, better, whatever that means, then I just wouldn't be in this business. And it's not really a business, it's a hobby, but you know what I mean. Okay, so let me see. Yes, Morgan, if the Christian God exists, is the Bible the way it is what he wanted? That's a kind of interesting question. So, I mean, look, the Bible, as we know, is not like it's not like the Quran in the sense that it's not a sort of continuous narrative composed over, say, a short period of time by one or a small team of people. It's not like a sort of project like that. As we know, these books were written over hundreds of years. They were edited and changed and cobbled together somehow to form some kind of sort of quasi-historical narrative of the history of the early Jews. And it's quite a ragbag, to be honest, isn't it? The New Testament as well. We've got the 4 canonical Gospels. There are many, many more Gospels that were not included in the New Testament because They didn't fit in with the theology of the early church fathers. So it's quite a strange document in that sense. A magnificent one, I must say. And that has to be said, even though I don't believe that there is a God, and I believe that Christianity is false and Judaism is false. Nevertheless, it's a great document in the same way that there are magnificent um, codices and manuscripts uh, in, I don't know, in early German language or in Latin or in Greek. There are some magnificent works in antiquity. So when I say that the Bible is a magnificent document, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it's necessarily that its claims are true. So yeah, if the Christian God exists, is the Bible what he wanted? And Matt very quickly said, well, if the Christian God exists, the Christian God can do anything. And yeah, if the Christian God exists, then the Bible is what he wanted. So what about that then? Why would a Christian God want the core document of faith to be presented as it is? Why allow it to have come into being and compiled in such a strange, sort of haphazard way, uh, where chance was a big element? And why did it take the church fathers so long to decide on the theology? And it could have gone many different ways. I've read, was it Bart Ehrman or somebody saying that there were many Christian theologies, and the one that we've got is the one that obviously prevailed. Why would there be so many different Christian theologies, and it would take I don't know, decades or a couple of hundred years for it to finally settle on what we now have, that Jesus is the Savior, Jesus was resurrected, etc. Because obviously there were the Essenes, there were the who were the Gnostics, and there were all sorts of groups who thought that the message of Jesus Christ was actually different, that it wasn't about salvation in order to live a life of bliss in eternity. It wasn't about that. It was about something else. It was about dealing with the condition of being a human being and trying to make the most of your time here on this earth. So it does seem really strange that if there is a Christian God, that the Bible would have come into being in the way that it did. I admit that, but on the other hand, what Matt says is absolutely right. If there is a Christian God, the Christian God can choose to disseminate his message however he wants, and there may well be a reason for the way that the Bible came to be, something that I'm not aware of. So, well, we'll have to leave that. We'll have to leave that one open. It didn't really resolve. So, yeah, okay. So let's just. Yeah, Matt went on to mention something. I'm not too sure in what context here, but oh yes, okay, yeah. Him and Owen were both saying that Christianity and a lot of religions are more about communities and groups than about theology. And he told a story about a friend of his who he knew from his Southern Baptist days, a pastor or something, and this pastor apparently married somebody in one of the groups, one of the church groups from the Southern Baptists. So he married her, and then he divorced and he left the Southern Baptists, and he met a Catholic woman, and he converted to Catholicism. And I think this illustrates quite well how people can move from one Christian community to another, change denominations for pragmatic reasons. And I personally, in a church group that I've been involved with in the last year of my life, Christians. And, most of those old people that have been married 30, 40 years, they've met their partners in the church. So they're very much bound up in the community. And I see a lot more. I don't see much theology coming from these people, but I see a lot of community coming from them. Okay, so Steve called in. This was a good one, actually. This was a good one. There are not that many people arguing for a global flood, but there are, I mean, not many, but you will find some. And I suppose that there are literalists out there who do believe that, the flood and the way that God used the flood to cleanse the planet, etc., is not seen metaphorically, but is seen literally. So there are people going around looking for some, geographical evidence and whatever evidence they can find that there was a global flood. And he came up with quite a few things. He said there's evidence of a tsunami wave, and there are trees which are in places that couldn't possibly have been the case unless there was a flood. And so he mentioned quite a few things. The problem is when people are firing these things at you, there's not really much you can say except that it's not a fact that there was a global flood, that the scientific world, there's no consensus that there was a global flood on this. And you'd have to go with them rather than some random person calling in, somebody who's been on to certain Christian websites where the main purpose is to convince you that there has been a flood, and they've put together some facts. I mean, maybe there is evidence. There's evidence of a tsunami wave and various other things. And I think it was either Matt or Owen said that they've picked out facts which fit their model. And we see this with not just the global flood, but with, I don't know, flat Earth and what else? I don't know, but just other claims which are contrary to what we know is the consensus in the scientific world. So you can do that. And I've got a friend who's a conspiracy theorist, and I've seen him do that as well. I've seen how they pick out things which seem to support their case. Now, some of these matters are so important that it's not up to me, somebody who's clueless, frankly, about a lot of geographical and geological science. It's not up to me to say, well, actually, yeah, because even if I say, well, actually, that sounds quite reasonable. How would a tree get up to that? How could there possibly be a tree of that type growing, in such a place? And maybe you're right. Maybe there was a flood that took it up to a certain level and left a few seeds somewhere. Or, yeah, where did that, why was there a tsunami wave there? There's no real, I mean, even if I reason and say, well, actually go along with somebody who's arguing for a global flood, and say, something, you're absolutely right. I think I probably believe in a global flood. There's no point convincing me. There's no point coming to me. And Matt made this point, and I think Owen might have made this point as well, that if you've got a scientific case for a global flood, calling an atheist show with these so-called evidence, it's meaningless. It's meaningless because you're never going to get me or Matt Dillahunty or anybody to admit, oh yeah, on the basis of that, yeah, I'll say there was a global flood. There probably was. We're not. What we're going to say is, look, we don't know. These are big important matters, and the way to do this is to publish publish a paper, have it properly reviewed, and let's see it in a proper academic journal, because calling amateurs like me and Matt and other atheists and putting this information to us, which may be true, maybe it's true, maybe it isn't, in order to arrive at any kind of conclusion which is going to have any value, it's got to be rigorously checked. So if you've got any kind of scientific points, get down to your university, call up the Department of Geology or Geography and say, look, I think I've really got something here. And they'll say, well, what is it? I'm convinced there was a global flood. I've looked at the evidence, and I think your mind will be blown by this. Can I come and talk it over with you? Well, actually, there's a chance they'll say no because they're just too busy with important things, and they know damn well there was no global flood. But let's supposing that you went along, if you were arguing for a global flood, and you went in to a university, you sat down in a, say, cafeteria with, I don't know, what would it be, head of geography or head of geography. Okay, and they'll say, right, what's your evidence? And he starts reeling off these facts. There was a tsunami. Okay, where was that tsunami? Where's the wave? Where is the reference to that particular evidence? Whether I don't know, I guess the landscape would have been checked, archaeological evidence or whatever they call it. I need this all referenced so I can then go out and check it all. I can't just take your word for it that these things are actually there. I need a whole list of properly referenced evidence so I can first go out and check that it is what you say it is, because it might not be. You might have misunderstood something. I don't think that these fools understand how rigorous academia is, and how we've got textbooks, we've got facts about the world, how much work goes in to establishing these facts. I don't know what they think that people are doing in these universities, that they're just cobbling together a few um, claims that they've picked up on YouTube and drawing conclusions from them. They don't realize it takes years. I mean, it can take, I mean, just one little thing. I mean, let's say an Antarctic ridge or something like that, under the water. Uh, I mean, it could be an academic's sort of 6 years of work to establish certain things about this ridge. It will result in a 100,000 word PhD with all sorts of backup data and references, and built upon previous research. These idiots, a lot of them theists mainly, are calling in. They've got absolutely no idea how academia works and how utterly rigorous it is, that they're calling into an atheist show and they think that they can prove there was a global flood by saying, oh yeah, there was a tsunami, there's evidence of that, and there's trees growing somewhere where they shouldn't have been growing. And oh god, it's unbelievable that there are such stupid people in the world, and they're calling they're calling these atheist shows. Yeah. Okay, I mean, my friend is a conspiracy theorist. He really shocked me because he called up the British Geological Survey, a well-respected organization, and he said to them that there are tremors going on the Earth, and this is being caused by, I don't know, the gravitational, no, what is it? The pole is shifting, or I don't know, gravitational irregularities caused by Planet X, some crazy stupid thing. And they said to him, "Where did you get this from?" Yeah, because he was saying, "Can you go and check your equipment? You're monitoring these things, and I know the explanation." And they say, "Well, where are you getting your information?" He says, "Well, there's a video on YouTube." I mean, can you believe it? Can you believe it that a friend of mine actually called the British Geological Survey and talked to a top academic expert in his field, and said that he gets his information from a YouTube video? It's absolutely embarrassing. I didn't say anything to him, but yeah, it is really embarrassing. Okay, yeah, so Steve, yeah, okay, so in the end, when asked by Matt, why is it that the academic world has not got the same conclusion as you, his answer was, well, scientists have not really looked at the evidence. Okay, well, um, I don't know why he thinks that scientists have not looked at the evidence when all they do all day long in universities is look at the evidence and interpret it and write papers. And yeah, so anyway, that's when Matt said, well, go to a university and show them the evidence and convince them, because they're the people you should be convincing, not people like me. Okay. Right, let me just read through some of your messages. Platonic Guts. Oh, that's a strange name. Are you atheist or anti-theistic on the idea of all-powerful, all-loving? Well, I wouldn't say that I'm not anti-theistic. I don't know if such a God exists. I don't know if any gods exist. I don't currently hold any beliefs in any gods because I haven't been convinced by the arguments and the evidence presented. But no, I wouldn't say I'm anti-theistic. I'm open to the possibility that there is a God, and I'm not saying that there is no God. So yeah, that's the fact. I'm not saying there is no God. And that's something that a lot of people, a lot of theists can't understand. I'm an atheist, so I'm saying there's no God. No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't hold a belief in a God, just like I don't hold a belief in that there is a Loch Ness monster. But I'm not saying that there is no Loch Ness monster. I'm not saying that there is no God. That there is a Loch Ness monster. But I'm not saying that there is no Loch Ness monster. And I'm not saying that there is no God. Okay. Right. Yeah, let's move on then. So that was Steve. Anthony. Oh, yes, Anthony called in. Anthony, more or less, the most important thing he called in about was the Kalam cosmological argument. Okay, so the Kalam cosmological argument is really predicated on this claim that the universe began to exist. Okay, that it began to exist, whatever it is. It came into existence. It began to exist. So, Matt, really not much needs to be said about this because they kept going backwards and forwards. And Matt's point was, and it's my point as well, how can it be shown that the singularity which expanded did not always exist? This is the point. This is why we don't know really what was, not that we don't know, but the Achilles heel of the Kalam cosmological argument. It gets off to a really bad start in a way. Well, no, it doesn't really it doesn't get off to a bad start, but it's flawed because we can't know that whatever expanded didn't exist in some form or another, and we can't go back and investigate, and we just plain don't know. And that's why, as neat and cute as the Kalam cosmological argument is, for two reasons it's unsatisfactory. One is, at best, even if you could accept and prove the premises, it only leads to a cause. And that cause could be some kind of natural or some kind of non-conscious, non-agent causation. And yeah, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is the claim the universe began to exist. That's the whole problem. The universe began to exist. You could call the universe that singularity, couldn't you? The universe, everything in existence concentrated into a whatever. We don't know. We don't know what it was, this singularity. We don't know what it was. We don't know whether or not it always existed or it was brought into existence by something else. And that's the problem. I just don't know. And when people ask me, what more can I say than that? And I think it's the strongest. Um, it's probably one of the strongest reasons to be an atheist. The ignorance, and I admit my ignorance on this. And I think that humanity is ignorant. The scientific world is ignorant on um, going back to the point when the expansion started. What was there? Has it always been there, or did it somehow come from something else? What was that something else? Was it a god, or was it just something else that we don't understand? That's the whole problem. That's why ultimately all of these cosmological arguments, they're not going to get you to a god, and at best they're just going to get you to a cause. So Anthony kept coming back to, well, Matt, the problem with your position is it just leads to a regression of causes. And Matt said, well, not necessarily, because that singularity may have just simply always have existed. In the same way that you're claiming your God always existed, this singularity always existed. It might have in some form or another always been there. And unless you can prove that that was not the case, then you're pretty much stuck with the rest of us shrugging our shoulders and just saying, I don't know. This is not going to get us to God, although it's something that William Lane Craig and a lot of other theists set great store by, and they will bring it out every time they debate. Okay, right. Oh yes, of course, and yeah. So Anthony, yeah, he says matter must have an immaterial cause. Well, prove it. That is a claim, and I don't see that that's necessarily the case. I mean, the thing about that singularity is we don't know whether it was matter or whether it's something else that we just don't understand. And I think we just don't understand it. It comes back to when Richard Dawkins, one of my favorite interviews, was talking to Piers Morgan. And Piers Morgan says, where did everything come from? And Richard Dawkins just said, we don't know. Completely reasonable answer. Piers Morgan said, well, that's not good enough. You're a scientist. I want to know, and you can't tell me. And according to the Bible, etc., etc., etc. So people would rather have a fairy story written 2,000 years ago when we hardly knew anything than just keep investigating and suspend one's judgment. Right. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this live stream. I won't be going for too much longer because there were not too many calls. There were some atheists who called in, but I don't usually comment on atheist calls. So let me have a look. So that was Anthony. Who else have we got? Oh, yes. Sorry. Owen. Yeah, of course. In order to demonstrate to Anthony why there's a problem with what he's saying, Owen brought up the pink dragon, invisible pink dragon. Yeah, I've got an invisible pink dragon in my lounge. You can't detect it. It's undetectable because it's invisible. It doesn't make a noise. You will never see anything from it. You will have absolutely no evidence of it whatsoever. Yeah, I've got it. It's in my lounge. Do you believe me? He completely misunderstood this. He completely misunderstood the analogy because, of course, this is what theists are doing. They're saying, I've got a pink dragon in my lounge. I've got faith in that, and you should believe in it too. Even though I can't provide any evidence of it at all. It doesn't manifest in any, in any way that's detectable. But I believe in it. I believe in the pink dragon. So he completely missed the point. And then we got to the shifting the burden of proof. They've argued this out with Anthony. They've proven that his position is untenable, and yet he's sticking to it. And he says, well, unless you can prove that something always existed, then you're wrong in your disbelief. And as Matt said, yeah, shifting the burden of proof again. I can't explain that. I can't explain X, Y, Z. Therefore, your solution to that has got to be accepted. No, it doesn't have to be accepted. Okay, so that was Anthony. Let me just have a look at your comments. Let's see. I've not really seen much from William Lane Craig recently. He's, well, I don't know. He's not somebody I sort of go out of my way to look for, but okay. So let's have a look. Oceanus Helios says, cue some theists to move the goalpost and say their God defies logic, then cue the theists to say atheism is illogical. Yeah, well, their big trump card is that God is not discoverable in the same way that I don't know, maybe some rare species, or I don't know, something in the material world is discoverable. Like we're searching for life in the universe. And if there is life in the universe, then I would think it's discoverable. Yeah. So what theists are saying is that their God is different. It's not discoverable because it's outside of space and time. So we'll never be able to discover it. If you've set your belief on such a thing, I can only say it's irrational and not reasonable to believe in it. If something is undiscoverable and it doesn't manifest in any kind of way that we could detect, then it's indistinguishable from something that doesn't exist, isn't it? And you would have no good grounds to believe in such a thing. Okay, but I'm just repeating things that many of you have heard hundreds of times before. So, right. Yeah, Caleb. Okay. Caleb call lasted 50 minutes. 50 minutes it lasted. He came on saying it's quite a good sort of opener. Can belief in God hinder science? Okay. So I think it was concluded. I think they went into a discussion, and it was concluded that it could hinder science, but that there are plenty of examples of it not hindering science. So yeah, we had Newton who believed in God. He did good science, and we've got countless scientists in the world who are doing good science, and their belief in God does not hinder them from that. I've seen scientists who believe in God and believe that abiogenesis did not happen and that God created life on Earth. But the scientists that I've heard say that are not necessarily working in biology. There are one or two who are working in biology. In fact, there are more than one or two. Yeah, there are some who, oddly enough, they're doing good science in the university, but somehow their belief that abiogenesis didn't happen and cannot happen is somehow not affecting the work that they're doing in the universities. I suppose that unless they're doing work on abiogenesis, then they probably wouldn't. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, so Matt's point, science did not lead theists to atheism. Sorry. Yeah, science did not lead I've written here, science did not lead atheists to atheists. Sorry. Science did not lead theists to atheism. Shouldn't that be the other way around? Yeah, science did not lead atheists to theism. Yeah, that's right. So, like Francis Collins, of course, he's the most commonly cited scientist who converted from atheism to theism, and science did not lead him to theism because, as we know, he discovered Jesus when he saw waterfall frozen into three pillars, and it reminded him of the Trinity. Thank you very much, Jim. Very generous of you. $5 there from you. I appreciate that. Um, yeah, so it's possible they put their religious beliefs to one side when they're doing science, and they're doing good science. That's what's happening effectively. However, there are claims in the Bible which are incompatible with a lot of what we know from science. So if you're going to be a literalist and believe that God literally created the world in 7 days, then obviously it's going to make it difficult for you to sort of do good science if you're going to accept that claim, I would think. Okay, so Caleb, I'm amazed that this call lasted 50 minutes. And he, by the way, he was using some kind of voice, I don't know, voice changer. I sometimes heard his voice speed up. The pitch of his voice changed. It seemed really strange, but he claimed he was 16 years old, which I found kind of startling, that somebody who is 16 years old has already absorbed all of Kent Hovind's propaganda and William Lane Craig and everything. And, you know, he seemed to have internalized, he seemed to have spent a lot of time on Christian websites which are arguing against evolution, against abiogenesis, etc. So he said that he went to the old thing that, well, um, you know, micro evolution is a thing, but it doesn't lead to speciation. It doesn't lead to new species. And Owen quite rightly said, well, it does, because all those thousands of incremental changes will eventually lead to a branching off of species. And he says, well, you can't observe it. Well, no, of course we can't observe it. I mean, how could you observe it over thousands of generations, watching a species gradually change in such small increments that from one increment to the next, it looks like there's no difference, but actually there is micro changes eventually result in big changes. So he was just wrong on so many levels. And as Owen or Matt said, it sounds like all this is coming straight from Kent Hovind. He also went to, oh yeah, DNA code, genetic code. Must be a coder. Well, we've heard that before, haven't we? And oh yeah, Caleb made a big deal about pronouns as well. I think it was him, pronouns, or was it one of the others? I can't remember, but it might have been Caleb, that he said, look, I'm a guy. I think it was Andrew. It might have been Andrew. He said, you refuse to give your pronouns. And he just said, well, you know, I'm a guy, I'm a man. So yeah, I don't need pronouns. And yeah, I don't use pronouns, which was a strange thing. And then Matt decided to say, well, I'm going to do this every time you say a pronoun. And it turned out he did sort of know what pronouns were, but he was just making some big point about, I don't know. I suppose he doesn't like, he's possibly a sort of anti-trans type person, anti-LGBTQ, anti-woke and all that kind of thing. And he probably just wanted to come on and make a point about it, which quite a few people do, really. And unfortunately, they spent about 5 or 6 minutes on that alone. Right. Who else was there? John called in to say it wasn't a long call. On what basis do you make moral statements? Well, again, that only lasted 6 minutes, and I don't really want to comment on that. It's back to this point that the problems we've got with, I suppose, justifying our morality are not solved by the existence of a God who has laid down an objective morality. That's what a lot of theists seem to think, that if they've got a God with an objective moral code, that's all they need. And Matt's argued quite well that no, it doesn't solve anything, because as we've seen from the Bible, for example, we had a God who seemed to have no issue with slavery. So no, it doesn't really solve anything. Let's see. Was there anybody else that called in? We've done Anthony, done Morgan, done John, done Caleb. That's about it, really. Unless any of you have got any questions or anything. Let me just see if there's anything that I can talk about. I need to. What do I need to do? I need to look and see what Alex O'Connor has been doing, and I need to. I've seen a lot of videos popping up in my feed. For example, I saw one yesterday. I think I bookmarked it. The title was, oh yeah, "The Odds Against Life Convinced Me for God." This convinces a lot of people that the odds that are being cited and quoted, for example, I don't know, it's 10 to the power of, I don't know, 600, I don't know, some huge big number against this happening and that happening, and the odds against existence as we know it are so great that it could only have been a God that did it all. Well, I'll probably have a look at that video, but where are they getting their figures? How are they working these things out? Are they aware? Are they aware about how big the universe is? That there are trillions of stars. Probably, I don't know, there may be several 100,000 star systems or solar systems not that different from ours. And it may well be that in all of those systems but one, the chemicals and the reactions and all the conditions did not quite line up. There were tens of thousands of near misses, and it hasn't happened yet. But if you've got enough events, then those odds could be accommodated. And it just so happened that it happened here. One out of maybe millions of planets. Everything happened just right here, but not everywhere else. We're the sort of royal flush that was dealt out first time, but there are millions of meaningless hands that were dealt out, and losing poker hands, where people have just got a pair, three of a kind, two pairs, whatever. We're the only royal flush that was dealt out on this planet. So I'm not impressed with these arguments about big numbers, because the universe is a heck of a big place, and I think that it's possible. It's possible. I don't believe that there's no life on any other planet in the universe. I think there's got to be life out there. I think that it would be amazing if there was no life out there except here. But I do believe that it's possible that life is still at microbial level on the vast bulk of those. Yeah. So I suppose we're just lucky that we sort of exist, and that we're on the planet, the sort of the golden planet, where everything lined up absolutely perfectly for us. Okay, so I think that's about it, really. I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. It's what time is it? It's 10 to 12 here in the UK, and it's 10 to 12 here. So I think I'm going to say goodnight and look forward to seeing you. I'll be doing my let's see, next Monday There may not be a live stream next Monday because I'm actually moving out of this house back to where I was before, and I'm actually moving on Monday. I've got a lot of work to do, so there may not be a live stream next Monday, but then again there might be. So you'll find out earlier in the evening if you just look at my channel. I usually say a few hours in advance about whether there's going to be a live stream or not. Yeah, good night, Jim. Thank you very much for that kind gift. Looking forward to doing my next stream. Goodbye.